Well, no longer 4th of July work period for Capitol Hill. Lawmakers will be in next week to continue contentious negotiations on the federal debt. Ron Klain is the former chief of staff to Vice President Biden. Ron Fournier, editor-in-chief of National Journal Group, and Kevin Madden is messed up our Ron table here today. He was Mitt Romney's campaign spokesman in 2008. He remains a supporter, but he's not officially affiliated with the campaign. Thank you, gentlemen. Ron Klain, I want to start with you. Since you've been involved in formations of negotiations that are taking place on Capitol Hill, but you were involved in the CR negotiations, how hard is this going to be to get this debt deal done at this point?
Well, I think it is going to be hard. Look, it's gone on a long time for a reason. But I think that President Obama made a very powerful case the other day about what needs to happen and what needs to get done, why it's very important, and hopefully folks will come to their senses and get together and get this thing done.
When during those CR negotiations, did you get the sense that when you were in that room that when Boehner spoke, he could speak for his caucus or not?
Well, that's a hard question to know. I'm barely an expert on Democratic politics. Trying to guess what's going on the Republican side is doubly hard. I think clearly they have a divided party. There's no question about that. But I hope everyone can come together around the idea that we shouldn't let this country go in default. The bills are due. We have to pay our bills. That's what great nations do. It's time to get it together and get that done.
Kevin Madden, the pressure on Republicans to realize the campaign's over here. They don't want, and politically, they don't want to give any victory to the president. At the same time, if they look like they're too political, they're going to get punished. How do you think that McConnell and
look, I think the president is struggling actually here. I think that he doesn't have any leverage, and he knows that John Boehner, or at least increasingly he's starting to recognize that John Boehner has all the leverage. John Boehner does know where his conference is, and not only does he know where his conference is, he knows where the Democrat caucus is. He knows where some of the votes in there that don't want to raise taxes and don't want to clean debt,
particularly in the Senate side of
particularly
things.
Right. So I think what you're seeing up on Capitol Hill is a dynamic of somebody who has got things done before, who is a very methodical, very disciplined politician in John Boehner, and President Obama, who doesn't know where he stands, and in the last two showdowns has caved to Republicans. John knows that, and he holds all the leverage, and he's aligned with where the public is on this issue.
Ron, break this a little bit of a stalemate here between the two. All right, one side's got the leverage, we got the, but
they both have leverage.
Okay.
Well, look, the Republicans in the 1990s were convinced that Bill Clinton had no leverage in the government shutdown, and it turned out he did. It's called the bully pulpit, and that's what we saw Barack Obama using in the news conference earlier this week, beating up on Republicans.
And do you think it worked? Considering,
also, by the way, raising some money, I suspect.
By the way, I was just going to say, doing what he did by drawing blood the way he drew yesterday. So does that mean Wednesday was a success for him politically or not?
We obviously don't know. One thing we know it did is it appeased his base. He probably raised a little bit of money online that he needs to do to have a good number at Q2. It also put some pressure on the Republicans at a time when he wants them to know there might be a pain point here, remind them of the 1990s. But both sides are using their leverage, and his is the bully pulpit, and the Republicans obviously have had the upper hand the last two goes around.
All right, I want to shift a little bit to fundraising. Ron Klain, we're seeing the Obama campaign machine come up. You were involved in the Biden campaign early on during the 2007 campaign. Yeah. When you see these two, and I guess take me into the mind of a Tim Pawlenty campaign, right? Who's watching, at least Mitt Romney is going to lap him. What is the anxiety level in sort of these second-tier candidates that are trying to be first-tier during these fundraising periods?
Yeah, the next 48 hours are the worst 48 hours of the campaign for someone on the Republican side who is not Mitt Romney. And it's obviously horrible to wake up and see that you've been working very hard in your second-tier campaign and someone has not only lapped you, but lapped you and lapped you and lapped you. And that's, I think, what you're about to see on the Republican side. In the end, I think the struggle for the Republicans isn't so much getting money, it's getting a message that can resonate with the voters. I think they're struggling on that. But some of these campaigns are doing well on money, some are doing extremely poorly.
Wait, now, Kevin, I want to ask you this, though.
We're having the problem with the money, the message we've got.
Yeah, well, I was just going to say, Mitt Romney's not going to raise as much as he did 4 years ago. This is an apples to apples. We're not even doing... Right. Why?
I think it's a very competitive environment out there. I think the tough economy will make it tougher to raise money. I think that the fact that there were a lot of candidates out there, like Haley Barbour, Mitch Daniels, even Rick Perry now.
You think that slowed things down?
I think it did. I think there were a lot of big money people who were still waiting on the sidelines. And I think right now maybe that'll change. I don't think this is going to be a number that's going to scare somebody like Rick Perry out.
Scare Rick Perry out.
Right. But I think that what you're going to see from Governor Romney is a much more efficient campaign. The last time it was a lot lot bigger burn rate. I think you'll see a much more efficient campaign when the cash on hand comes out.
The Ron table sticks around, as also Kevin Madden. We'll be back. I want to talk a little bit about independent voters. All right, let's bring back the panel. Ron Klain, Ron Fournier, and Kevin Madden. I want to talk about independent voters. Ron Fournier, you wrote a book a few years back about the Applebee's America, and the whole idea was sort of this idea that there is a disaffected group of voters out there. The two parties got them, but they're renting them.
Exactly.
Okay. Where do you see this time that's similar to sort of where things were in 1992?
It's the same dynamic, although it's bigger. There's a bigger disaffected middle that is not being, that's not connecting at all with Washington. It's very disaffected with all their institutions, religious, military, media, and especially politics in Washington, which is why we've seen these great swings these last few elections. And it's why you can't assume, just because Barack Obama's numbers now are abysmal among independents, you can't assume that's going to be the case a year from now.
And they're very volatile. And Ron Klain, you were involved a lot in that 92 campaign back in the day. The response, you could tell the Clinton campaign back then responded to the Perot movement. Took on issues that they never thought about they were taking on a year and a half earlier, went to the debt and the deficit. Do you feel like the Obama team is finally responding and they're a little slow to the party here?
I don't think they're slow to the party. They're definitely responding. And I think the big dynamic this time is going to be actually on the Republican side, where you see a primary where they're getting pushed farther and farther to the right, having to swear allegiance to more and more extreme positions to get through that very contentious, very competitive primary process with Michelle Bachmann and Herman Cain driving it. I think that's going to make it harder for whoever comes out of that to appeal to those Applebee's voters, because they're going to be way out there on the far plank.
Kevin, the candidate you worked for, Mitt Romney, does seem to be trying to avoid this pitfall.
Right.
He's trying hard to avoid it. If he doesn't, does that become a problem?
Well, potentially, but I mean, I'm looking at it with a much more positive outlook, Chuck. I think that you have to look at where the most persuadable voters are. And if you look at many of these early primary states, places like New Hampshire, places like South Carolina, independent voters play very large there, and particularly in the general
election. You think Romney's counting on this? Well, I think some of these conservative independents to participate.
Look, I think conservatives, I think independents, and I think some conservative Democrats are most animated right now about the economy. And that's the issue that Governor Romney's focused on. So he's focused on the larger swath of the electorate and what's animating them right now.
Very quickly, because I got to go shameless plugs.
Well, here's one thing to look for, a comparison. There was Republicans that pushed Clinton to the middle in the 90s with things like welfare reform. Republicans could be pushing Obama to the middle on fiscal reform.
And that could end up helping him in a weird way.
That and killing bin Laden.
He's getting dragged into the
All right, very quickly, shameless plugs. Make them fast, 5 seconds.
The National Journal Daily, new leader, Matt Cooper, and Major Garrett writing a column every day.
I love it, Major and Matt. Good stuff, Ron.
My new column, Bloomberg View, every other Tuesday.
Look at that. Personal shameless plug.
NRSC.org has a great new web ad out today called Actions Not Words that's hitting the president.
The only person that did a shameless plug that they're technically not affiliated with. That's okay. That's why they're shameless. The Ron table was great. Kevin Madden, you were all right, too. Aren't you glad Jeter's back?